not be recorded. You will not be recorded unless you are speaking. So if that is something that you want to avoid, just throw things into the chat and we'll read them out for you so you can avoid being as part of the video that we post on the blog and the website after the fact. Welcome everybody. We're still having folks stream in, but I just wanted to welcome you. This is our April legislative debrief meeting. We've got some superstar, rock star legislators. Several have already joined. We're going to hear from Representative Frank Chopp. We're going to hear from Rep. Nicole Macri, Representative Strom Peterson, Senator Claire Wilson. So we've got a nice, wonderful agenda planned for you all. So just a reminder, you can access closed captioning if that is something that is helpful or useful for you. We invite you to rename yourself with your name, your pronouns, your agency. We always love to see faces and understand that it's been a long 2 years. So we understand if that is not something that's feeling comfortable or appropriate at this point. We're just happy you're here. As part of our legislative debrief, we are also going to get a report out from the Washington Coalition for Homeless Youth Advocacy with the Mockingbird Society, and then also the Statewide Poverty Action Network. And then, as Allison mentioned, we are going to talk briefly about membership because we have some new things as part of membership that we want to share with you. And then we have quite a few member announcement and updates, as we've for several months now been promising that we're going to have a little bit more of that solidarity community information sharing building. We'll have good time for that. So welcome folks, happy you're here. I think I might, if I may, boldly ask Representative Chopp, as the first legislator that I saw enter the meeting, read our mission statement, and hopefully you all can see that. Is that showing?
You want me to read that?
Yes, please, if you may.
Okay. Mission: we mobilize our community to challenge systemic causes of homelessness and advocate for housing justice.
Thank you kindly, Representative Chopp. And on that note, I'm going to hand it over to my dear colleague, Sarah, to get us going on our debrief.
Great, thank you, Jody. For those of you that don't know me, Sarah Robbins, and I'm the Senior Policy Manager here at the Seattle-King County Coalition on Homelessness. And we have a great meeting this morning with a number of legislators that are true champions on the issues that we care most about: homelessness, housing, and in general, human services. We are super lucky actually to have the chair of both of the human services committees here, Senator Wilson from the Senate and Representative Peterson from the House. And they are going to talk a little bit today about, this was a short session. Short sessions make getting, large policy and large things more difficult, but we did a lot of that this session. So they're going to talk about some of the big wins. They're going to talk about some of the losses, but in this realm of policy and legislative advocacy, a loss just means how are you going to change your strategy, increase your strategy, and plan for the next session. What are you going to do differently to get it done the next time around? And so, on a, my job is working in this realm all the time. I'm happy to have these folks here in my house. My kiddos that are fairly young, think of these folks as being, very famous TVW is on all the time. So these folks are on TV every day during legislative sessions. So these are, in my 8 and 9-year-olds world, the famous people. So we will start this morning. Has Representative Macri joined us yet? Okay. She has some time constraints, so we will get to her as soon as she pops on. But why don't we start with Representative Peterson? Oh wait, there, I think I see Representative Macri joining us. So since she has some time constraints, we will start with Representative Macri, who represents the 43rd Legislative District. And if you don't speak legislative districts, that means she is here in Seattle, central Seattle, up north to the Green Lake area and west to the lake. And she is going to talk this morning about a couple of big things that happened this session, one being a budget proviso around workforce and also House Bill 1724 regarding permanent supportive housing. So Representative Macri, I will turn it over to you.
Thanks so much, Sarah, and thanks for having me. It's great to see everyone, including a couple of my colleagues from the legislature. Yeah, so I am really delighted to share the news that Sarah previewed, and want to extend my thanks to the many people who helped both inform these policy approaches and advocate for their passage this past session. So the first one is a budget proviso. We started out with a request for $78 million for worker relief and stabilization in the homeless service sector. The final budget included $55 million. So not everything we asked for, but still a pretty substantial amount that we think will help to assist at least 20,000 workers across Washington state who are working in homelessness services. And the idea of how those dollars will be deployed is the Department of Commerce will likely contract with a provider or multiple providers to provide stipends to individuals who work in homelessness services if those services if those programs receive public dollars. Folks will just need to demonstrate they work for an eligible employer and then will be able to receive a stipend of $2,000. We had talked, and I see some of you here in the meeting who participated in many of the stakeholder groups we had about how to structure this. And we had originally talked about creating it as a provider relief fund with a focus on worker support. But you know, I've worked in homelessness services for a really long time, and as you know, doing coalition work, you get 10 homeless service providers in a room and you get 10 different ideas about how to distribute the money. And so we then work together to create a centralized way to get the dollars directly to workers. So a couple of exciting things in addition to those stipends is that the proviso includes a retention element. So for workers who stay at the same employer for 6 months after they receive their first stipend, they can be eligible for a second stipend, so up to $4,000 total. And I think most importantly for the sustainability of this effort is we included a study for the state to look at workforce sustainability and the role that the state should play. As you all probably know, unlike other areas of public service, homeless services is not generally funded through the state general fund, but through dedicated resources, mostly through the document recording fee. And it is not funded through a rate setting program like we have in other state funded services, such as healthcare, behavioral health, long-term care, childcare, et cetera. And so child welfare services. And so really we need to examine how the state can continue to play a significant role in sustaining these services that more and more communities across Washington depend on, because the ability to scale up these services, which we did do significantly in the budget, depends on us having a workforce that is treated with dignity and respect and compensated for the very challenging work that this is. So that was very exciting to be able to work on that and get that success. And then on the House Bill 1724, which is the Permanent Supportive Housing Advisory Committee, we have done tremendous work with great help from members of this coalition to increase support to permanent supportive housing. And I think you'll hear a report from Representative Chopp about an exciting development on that front. As our state continues to invest more dollars in permanent supportive housing and look at how we build capacity for more providers to provide supportive housing and more communities to get engaged in it, we know that we need to be informed from voices who have most been impacted by permanent supportive housing, including people with lived experience of homelessness, living with disabilities, including behavioral health disabilities, physical disabilities, developmental disabilities, people providing supportive housing, and from geographic areas across the state and from underserved communities, including BIPOC communities from all across the state. So we set up this advisory committee that the Department of Commerce will pull together as an ongoing group to provide counsel to the state about strategic investments and policies related to supportive housing. So, we do all this work on the legislative front to set policy and to make investments, but often it is the ongoing implementation of those policies and budgets where the real action happens. And so setting up this standing group will allow for key voices to continue to have an influence on how we make those investments. So those are two of many things I worked on this session that we're very, very excited and very grateful to members of this coalition for all your support on that.
Thank you so much, Representative Macri. This monthly meeting will be a place where we will be providing regular updates on that workforce stipend. As soon as it is up and running, we will let people know that are working in direct services how they can apply, how they can let their staff and friends and coworkers know that that's available. So yes, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Yes, if you have questions, please put them in the chat. We did get some questions ahead of time, but we can also take some of your questions. We are going to turn things over to Representative Strom Peterson, Legislative District 21, which is the home parts of Snohomish County that include Edmonds, Linwood, Mukilteo, so up north. And Representative Peterson is going to talk to us today about a couple of bills that didn't make their way all the way through, but what we can all think about and prepare for the next session and work during the interim. And those are House Bill 2075 around DSHS access and House Bill 1904 around setting limits on rent increases. So welcome, Representative Peterson.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I get to play the role of the Saturday Night Live Debbie Downer. Wah, wah, wah. And oddly, those House Bill 2075 and 1904 were actually both bills that I sponsored. So we'll try to figure out what's going on there. So as you all know, well, first of all, thank you everybody for being here, for the work that you do. Thanks Representative Macri for just the powerhouse stuff that we got through the budget. That was obviously, I think, the biggest game changer especially in the short session, but to have that kind of advocacy as vice chair on the Appropriations Committee, you can just see it in any budget document that's out, that the work that she and Representative Gregerson did, along with the chair, of course, but just great stuff that helps ease the pain of maybe a couple of these bills that didn't quite make it across the finish line. So we'll start with 2075, which again would not have happened without this group, one kind of twisting my arm to actually drop the bill, and really getting us to, showing me and then showing the rest of the legislature just what was happening with really our most vulnerable citizens, friends and neighbors not being able to access the services. It was something that, I just had not kind of realized that these, with these offices being closed, that there is just a significant percentage of folks that, one, they can't sit on the phone for hours and hours. Not that anybody, that's really hard for kind of anybody in just kind of the safest and kind of regular circumstances to try to be on hold for 4 or 5 hours while waiting for somebody. But, as we think of folks that might not even have a place to charge their phone or enough minutes, the examples are just more and more. So, we dropped the bill. We had hearings. We had incredible success with testimony from people. We had incredible success with talking to everybody in the legislature about this and what it really meant to have government services open, available, and responsive to the people that really need these services. And so I think, as you probably all know, the bill itself, and of course with the help of the phenomenal Senator Wilson over on the other side of the rotunda, passed the legislature with one lone no vote. And so we were all feeling pretty good. I was feeling pretty good about it. And during that process, the beginning of the process, I did have conversations with DSHS, and of course they were initially concerned that this was a big budget ask. We changed the language of the bill to make sure that this was really just about getting these offices open, and that future kind of budget requests this was kind of the flag that we were going to wave. It's like, yes, we know that more work needs to be done, but this is a very simple, straightforward bill, just to get those budgets, or just to get those offices open. So it ended up that there was not a budget implication, because the money had been sitting there, for DSHS employees to kind of get back and get these offices open again. So again, pretty excited at the end of session that this passed with such great bipartisan support, got some great support out of the community. And then lo and behold, we all got a message on, I think it was a Wednesday, that the governor was going to veto the bill. I have had conversations with the governor's office. I can't say that I'm satisfied with the explanations that they gave me. So I'll just kind of, if you want to try to talk to them, feel free. But there was always a conflict between the legislative and executive branches. There is always some rub and some friction in there. And according to the governor's office, they thought that we kind of overstepped our bounds on how we were trying to manage DSH offices. I completely disagree with that premise, because if you look at kind of any budget, or probably 80% of the bills that we write, it has some sort of direction to a state agency on how we think, as the legislative body, the body that appropriates the money, that they should do the work. So some some disagreement there. On the plus side, however, during the legislative process and after the veto itself, I have had a number of conversations with the new Secretary Meneses, about what we wanted to do, kind of with the initial bill, the kind of broader idea of the bill, but also the more specific thing of getting the offices open. Obviously, she kind of took this to heart, and the offices did open up, and great credit to her for just, saying to me, she goes, "Bill or no bill, you're right. We have to open these offices." And so she did that, and she has been, I think, an excellent partner to work with. My hesitation, and not has anything to do with her, but in general, I always think the legislature, why I also wanted to keep this bill going, that the legislature needs to have a statement about things like this, because Secretary Meneses might decide, I don't like this job anymore, and I'm going to go retire and move to Fiji, and then we don't know who the next secretary is. So I have complete faith in her commitment to the work that this bill talked about, and so much of the work that you're doing, but I'm always concerned that the next secretary might not have that same commitment. So that's why I think it's important that the legislature kind of have a stamp, this is what we think. But moving forward, again, I think there is broad agreement that kind of the next step in this process is that investment in fixing a very broken system. And that goes from the technology, which is 20, 30 years old. The phone technology is old. Any kind of web portals are old. So making sure that we can effectively, probably reach 85% of the people that need to access the services through that kind of more traditional method that many of us on this call would be able to use. We can get on the phone, we can get online, we can, enter the information and be successful in getting that kind of services. But we also want to make sure that 50, and I don't know if these percentages are correct, but let's say, 10 or 15% of the most vulnerable that will never access, whether it's because they have traumatic brain injury. I met with people in the traumatic brain injury advocacy world, and there are people with TBI that they need a face-to-face contact. They can't do 2 dimensions or be on the phone with somebody. Obviously, there are people that are living on the streets or nearly living on the streets that are not going to be able to access services through a website or the phone. So we're making sure that we're not ignoring that group while working to implement this kind of broader structural change. Those meetings should start soon. I have indicated my very strong desire to the governor's office that the legislature be included in these talks, and that this just can't be something that the governor's office works on either with advocates or however they want to do it, but this should be a joint effort with the legislature and the governor's office. So more to come on that, but I think that will, I think they have heard that message, but always willing to have other people help amplify that message if you so choose. So that's on 2075. On 1904, so this was the bill that basically, to me, we thought this was a pretty simple, wasn't going to be a huge heavy lift, basically saying that landlords needed to give tenants a 6-month notice on any kind of significant rent increase. The numbers moved around a little bit through the negotiation of the bill, but we never got that bill to the floor of the House. I think somebody said, early on, I think, Sarah, you may have said, 60-day sessions can be tricky, especially when we're moving a lot of stuff. And in the previous session or two, we moved some significant legislation on landlord-tenant reform. And so the appetite was maybe not as robust as some of us would have liked, with I think leadership in both rotundas, that this would turn into a big fight again after we had some good successes, and they were, I think, kind of looking at the calendar and seeing what other big fights we were going to have, whether through budgets, through significant gun legislation that we passed, through a number of other pieces of legislation that we passed. So there was a decision not to move forward with it. I openly regret now maybe not pushing back a little bit harder to keep this conversation going. I just read an article this morning in the Washington Post about rent increases across the country, and that they're still at record levels. Every year is just setting another record level. So we actually had a conversation with some folks last night, including Representative Macri, about moving this bill forward again. I have every intention of reintroducing this bill. I think it's incumbent upon us as legislators that understand this, that have been kind of steeped into this stuff, and a lot of you to help us with the education of our colleagues, to make sure that they really understand that kind of the headline grabbing stuff that's been in kind of especially Western Washington about home prices rising and how home affordability and purchasing is so huge, and how that's really affecting so many families. The same is true for rent. And we just have to make sure that our colleagues are making that connection, that every rent increase puts more and more people vulnerable to homelessness, and vulnerable to substandard living conditions, and vulnerable to all of those things. So we just, me included, need to do a better job of educating our colleagues ahead of next session. And then finally, in part of doing that, actually for both 2075 and 1904, we're having a work session in probably October. Frank, you're on the committee, so you'll be there. A work session really on those two bills and what we can do to kind of continue that education, and having some reintroduction of both of those concepts into the legislature. So that will help kind of prime the pump to make sure that not only people on the committee understand what we're going to push for, but then we'll be able to use that to create a broader message and kind of coalesce our words around that. So those are the updates on those two bills. So disappointing, but we're not, that the fight has just begun on those. So we will be back with that and a lot of other great stuff, I'm sure. So again, happy to answer any questions, and thanks for letting me ramble on.
Thank you so much, Representative Peterson. And, as I said in the chat, 2075 didn't make it all the way through to signature, but I truly believe that if we had not introduced that bill and done all of the education and advocacy that we did around why the offices needed to reopen, that they wouldn't have reopened when they did. And that really was, yes, we have bigger goals in putting that into statute so that it can't happen again, but we did get the offices open, and people can now walk into the offices. And we will continue to work with DSHS. We have, in addition to legislative advocacy, we are doing direct advocacy with DSHS as a partner in working to improve and streamline services. And if anyone wants to be involved in that or has stories that they want to share, please feel free to reach out to me, and we can connect you. So thank you so much, Representative Peterson. We are going to now hear from Representative Chopp. Representative Chopp is also from the 43rd Legislative District here in City of Central and North Seattle. And he's here today to talk about a very important bill that passed, which is House Bill 1866, also called Apple Health and Homes. And I will let him talk about what this great bill is going to do for housing.
Well, thank you for inviting me to speak here today. I feel a little sheepish going ahead of Claire Wilson. I mean, I respect all the work she's done, so I was looking forward to seeing what she has to say. Well, I want to thank you for inviting me. I also, it's great to see Nancy Amade here. So Nancy, call my office. We need to chat about a couple of things. So sorry, since I got you here. Look, we had a major advance with House Bill 1866, Apple Health and Homes. I want to thank, in particular, Nicole Macri and others who were really instrumental in moving this bill forward. And it builds on a lot of work that Nicole did in previous years, working with Debbie Teal from the Corporation to Support Housing, and also June Robinson from the Senate. Of course, then I think she was in the House. Also Kate Baber, which created the Foundational Community Support Program in the Healthcare Authority. Luckily, that work already been done to lay the groundwork for Apple Health and Homes, which means that we can now build on a solid foundation, literally, with Foundation Community Supports. There's great excitement about this thing statewide. We involved over 200 stakeholders at many meetings. Allison, thanks for going to at least a couple of those. And if any of you want to be involved as we implement this thing, just let my office know. We responded to the context that we're in. This tragedy that's out there, almost a scandal, though it is a scandal, that we see people suffering and dying on the streets. We have got to deal with that. The context is that, and based on research, that evidently over 70% of our neighbors who are chronically homeless are homeless because of their medical condition. That is, mental illness, substance use disorder, or a significant physical disability. So Apple Health and Homes is based on a very simple premise. If you are homeless because of your medical condition, then you should have a home as part of your medical treatment. Okay, that is the basic driving concept through this thing, which when you say it, it sort of sounds, well, yeah, obviously, but evidently, according to Debbie Teal, we're leading the nation on this, which is fine, but it's a little amazing that other places in the country haven't actually done this. So anyway, we got a lot of important work to do going forward. And we were really pleased with how much support we did get from the Health Care Authority and the Department of Commerce. The other thing is it passed with bipartisan support, 96-2 in the House, and quite a bit less so, but it's still bipartisan in the Senate. The thing about that is that if you put homelessness in the context of healthcare, you get broader public support, because every single legislator has a family member or a friend or a neighbor or whoever who has challenges, mental illness, substance use disorders, including specific Republicans who've been on TV with their son talking about their troubles in their families. I don't want to name their names, but it's pretty public out there. And so they said, this is the way to go forward on this. And so I'm very heartened by that, because we'll need that over the next period of years. The bill, of course, was signed by the governor. There's over $300 million in the capital budget to do the capital acquisition and construction of new housing to start this program, not the end, but to start it. We also have, thanks to Nicole and a few others there, like Tim Ornsby and whatnot, we have about over $40 million in operating budget funds to get this off and running. I would really encourage you to read the bill, because it has specific things about what the criteria is for you to qualify for a home. And it's actually been in the administrative code for a while, but we put it in state law, which will be the basis later of other legal actions that we may want to take. We also really encourage your feedback, because we anticipate the need for a follow-up bill next year to tweak the things. And we couldn't accommodate everybody's point of view through this process, but we got it done, got it signed, and now we're off and running. The effort will have a open stakeholder meeting of whoever wants to show up to talk about the bill and to debrief from the session. That'll happen within the next 3 or 4 weeks. You're all invited. Let my office and also Nicole Macri, the two of us are going to be helping coordinate that meeting to give feedback about how it went, what things are still concerns, because we got to make sure this thing is carried out appropriately. Next is that Nicole and I are basically co-chairing, I guess you can say it. Sorry about that, Nicole. I started jumping the gun and calling you a co-chair, but are co-chairing the statewide coordinated effort of advocates and key legislators who want to help on this. And that includes Marcus Riccelli from Spokane, And also Monica Stonier from Vancouver. We will add June Robinson as well, and we're open to other legislators as well, plus other key people from around the state who really helped us get this done. We already are hearing from areas of the state for actual projects, which is critical. You can talk all you want about the need for housing. You have to have projects and sites, and it's just drive it forward. So in Spokane, there's one project to acquire a hotel, plus another site for new construction of hundreds of units of housing, of permanent supportive housing. In Vancouver, the city of Vancouver is very excited, working with Monica and others. And so we got 2 potential sites there. In Yakima, Rhonda Hoff from the clinics there, plus Marty Miller from the farm worker housing group is organizing that effort to actually get sites, get projects, and let's get it done. Also Olympia, I don't know if I should say this, but Beth Dolio, who was very instrumental in helping us pass House Bill 1590 to give the 1/10 sales tax authority, which we worked on for, well, we passed it actually 3 years ago, but finally we got the county, King County, to pass it last year. I think that had something to do with, the election. Anyway, so moving on, I don't care how it gets done. We just got to get this done so people are not suffering and dying on the street. Okay. Also in Grace Harbor, of all places, we've got a very local group there with the Coastal Community Action Program. And on and on. There will be lots of places who want this housing, because what's missing in this current system, we do have foundational community support housing services, but not the house. So that's the missing element, which is pretty obvious, and we'll move forward on that. So we also are looking longer term on revenue ideas, because we cannot rely on federal government, since it's going to change later this year, to provide ongoing funding for capital dollars, things like that. So therefore, we have to, as we've done before with childcare and higher education and public, schools and all that, we've done that repeatedly over the last several years to provide ongoing revenue sources dedicated to this purpose. In addition, we want to provide some grants to organizations around the state, particularly including BIPOC organizations, so they can build the capacity to actually develop these housing and then own and operate. And in the bill that Nicole helped write, but also amend as we went along, was a minimum of 10% essentially for BIPOC organization. That's just a floor. So we'll be working with all sorts of groups, Chief Seattle Club, for example, locally, and others, because we want strong participation across the state. And we also want to keep track of the notion that this not only saves lives, but actually reduces costs. And people have talked about that for years, but the reality is, if you're on the street homeless with a chronic health condition, the cost to the system is vastly more than if we just got that person a home and provided support services, to the tune of like $46,000 less per year per person. And so that's another driver, is that we've got to keep that knowledge of what we're doing, which is, of course, saving lives, but also reducing costs, because that matters to a lot of people. So I can go on at length, but I think I'll end it at that. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk with you, and appreciate also, I want to mention that in the capital budget, we've pushed through and made it happen. $15 million in homeless youth projects around the state. This is the 4th year running that we've had this coalition of Kim Justice and people like Liz Troutman and Jesse Friedman, who's here as well. Thanks, Jesse, and others, to really, and in particular, Lisa Callan. Lisa Callan is in the 5th district. Remember that as you plan your summer. With that, I'll leave it next to Senator Wilson. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Representative Chopp, for your leadership on this important housing issue. So last but not least, we have Senator Claire Wilson here. She represents the 30th Legislative District, which is in South King County and a little piece of Pierce County, I believe. And Senator Wilson is the chair of the Senate Human Services Committee. And we're hoping you can talk to us a little bit about the work in your committee this session, and what do you see as important pieces that we would want to be involved in our next upcoming session?
Well, first of all, I crack up, Rep Chopp, because I'm like the sweep up of like the king and queen of who's been around. And you stole my thunder because Nancy Amadei is on here, and Pat a Butter. I started years and years and years ago, and she's one of the first people I ever learned about advocacy for, and has continued to do that with young people and with young families through early learning for years. So first person I see this morning is her. And so my heart is warm. And then Representative Chopp, I've known you forever since FPA. So to be here with both of you is an absolute honor. And I was wondering, why would you want me here? And so I think this is my first time here as sitting chair of Human Services, Reentry and Rehabilitation for the Senate. And I have big shoes to fill. And that was Senator Darneal, who stepped out of the role and is now working inside of Department of Corrections, really looking at gender responsive care and really the work with our vulnerable populations and protected classes inside our Department of Corrections. And I think it's also important to know that in the Senate, I get bills from 3 different committees in the House. I get bills from Human Services, from Representative Peterson. I get bills from Rep Goodman, from things that have to do with Department of Corrections and Criminal Justice. And then I get bills from Rep Sen's committee. So I cover all of DSHS, all of DCYF, all of child welfare, all of the J8 to 25 institutional stuff with young people, and also Department of Corrections. So what I can share with you is one of the best things in the world is to have partners in the other chamber where we can work together and get as many bills through as we can. And you probably have seen in the last 2 sessions with our virtual nature, there's not a lot of companion bills, which makes things even more difficult because there's not an opportunity for either house to really do any work or really getting pre-knowledge about bills. And so when you do see bills that don't pass, I think sometimes it's because of the nature of we don't have companions, where before we would have a bill that would move on either in both houses, and then just based on either calendar or based on ability or number of bills, one would move versus the other. So the last couple sessions, you've seen very, very few of those kinds of companion bills, which again may be impacting some bills that didn't pass. And I would say I do want to talk about 2 bills that did pass that impact our forward movement as you think about the work in this space. And that is, there was a bill that was a LUPRO. It's a Legislative Executive Poverty Reduction Oversight Work Group, and it is a group that's really looking at statewide strategies around poverty reduction. And within that bill, I was able to increase membership to include members from the LGBTQ Commission, members from the Women's Commission, and also a member from the Office of Equity. As we think about poverty reduction and we think about homelessness, we think about all of those things, and we know who are those individuals that are most likely to be homeless and why are they homeless. It's important to make sure that there's representation on all of the work we do, whether it's a commission or a work group, to make sure that those voices are heard. For we can do 2 people and we can do 4 people, but it's when we do with people that we make the greatest difference. The other one is a bill that is compensation for lived experience. And so again, as we think about our work in the state, we often have asked people who have little to nothing to give not only of their time, but oftentimes the money, the little they do have to get where they need to go in order for their voices to be heard. So the compensation for lived experience bill allows anyone who is part of a work group or a commission or any of the work happening within the state to move something forward will be allowed to A, to have a stipend, and B, also to have childcare and other kinds of expenses considered. And it's a $200 stipend, and it's around lived experience and or low income. It's not one or the other. It could be one or the other. It could be both. But critically important again is we're making decisions for people as opposed to those that are actually impacted, knowing what's best and what they need to take their next steps. So those two things will help, I think, as we move forward in making sure that the intent of legislation and the impact of legislation we create are aligned, because that's oftentimes also what happens. We have a great idea, but unless we've actually lived it, we don't know that it is not a help at all. And for me, as I move forward, I lived for years in the world of early care and education. And we're the only place in the world, I say, where you got to do the wrong thing to get what you need to do it right. So a lot of my focus moving forward will also be around prevention and about what is it that we're providing not only families with young children, but what are we providing young people in order for them to feel connected, feel valued, be able to be their whole true selves, and be members of a community without feeling like they have to leave or they have to, they just don't have that, the whole child, whole family, whole community support that they need. So a lot of the work also that I'm doing and that we'll be working on this next session is around reentry services in particular, again, for our youth populations who are involved or get involved in justice systems, and how it is that we make sure that we are wrapping our arms around and supporting them exiting those public systems of care to make sure, again, that they're back into communities where they are whole and that they are also contributing members. Let me see what else is on my list. I think the other thing is, and this may not have anything to do with this, but I think it has everything to do with this, is when individuals don't feel like they're part of systems, they leave. And I'm just going to talk about K-12 because I also sit as vice chair of K-12 and early learning. And our schools oftentimes are pushing young people out as opposed to inviting them in. And so again, as we think about where young people are and what has been in the past a place of support and a place of community, we need to continue to make sure that we grow and we develop and we understand young people as they walk the world today. And in particular, when we think about young people who feel like they're on a fluid continuum, when they think about sexuality, that's a tough thing for adults to figure out and to understand. And in school systems, we push kids out because we don't understand. In families, oftentimes we push kids out because we don't understand. And so how is it that we create deeper understanding and acceptance and places and spaces where people can be their whole true selves? And it's not about morals and it's not about values. It's about making sure that people understand that we all are human and we're all valued and there's a place for us. And that is so critically important. And it's not about a bill, it's about feeling part of something. And that's the intent, I think, every time, at least what I try to work toward. And then the only other thing I would say is we think about homelessness. I've been doing a lot of work with sex workers and those in the sex trades. And we've had a lot of conversation around sex trafficking and sex workers and sex trades, and where there's some disagreement and where there is needs to be deeper understanding, and what does it look like, and what do individuals need actually to lift themselves up and get themselves out of a situation. And again, a lot of survival sex workers I'm working with on 99, and they are surviving by doing what they're doing. And they're surviving and they have a place to sleep. They're doing it because they have someone who's protecting them. They're doing it because they get food. and they're doing it because they may get money in order to survive. And so again, as we think about who our vulnerable populations are and how is we help prevent those things from happening, that's kind of a big focus area for me. And I'll stop and wonder if anyone has questions.
Great. Thank you so much, Senator Wilson. We are definitely lucky to have these legislators helping us to pass laws and policy that really take into consideration the needs of everyone here in Washington. We have a little bit of time for questions. I haven't seen anything come in the chat, but feel free to unmute or raise your virtual hand if you have questions for any of our legislators.
Sarah, there is a question about it. Amanda had said in the chat she was concerned that if agencies have to give stipends, they may not allow the voices. And within, I just want to say within the legislation, the RCW for the principles of equity are embedded in the intent language in the legislation. And within the RCW around the philosophy around the equity, the Office of Equity that's been created, that is their mission. And so we will be collecting information and data on that. And you will see when you look at the principles of equity, it's very clear the individual membership needs to be inclusive of that. So and the Office of Equity will be given, their task is to work with the Office of Financial Management to create an aligned system between and among agencies and how it is they're going to do the stipends also, so that we're not setting up more barriers for individuals who need to have those dollars. So I just want to make sure you know that that is addressed in the legislation.
Wonderful, thank you.
Perfect, thank you. Any other questions? I'll also want to thank we have our contract lobbyist with us here today, Melanie Smith, who has been great in guiding us through this session and will continue to work with us in the interim and session on all of these important issues. So yeah, any other questions, feel free to jump in. And I guess I can throw out a general question that came out that was submitted ahead of time. And this can be for any of the lawmakers on the call. Is there anything specific that folks can do if they want to get involved in any of the either the issues that we've talked about today or other issues that are important to them? What kinds of information or contact is helpful during this interim period?
Well, I could just add what I said earlier is that if you're interested in Apple Health and Homes, particularly in obviously Seattle King County, you should let Nicole and myself know that. I just met with Michael Winkler-Chin, who's the new head of the Office of Housing for the City of Seattle. They have evidently about 4 projects they'd like to have funded through the capital side. They also are really excited about partnering with us on ongoing operating costs as well. So if you have projects in mind, we should know about that so we can, then Nicole and I can convey that to folks at the state level for the funding. There will be I think a request for interest as well as a request for proposals starting in about June for applications to the state capital money. But the Department of Commerce is still organizing the new Office of Apple Health and Homes in the Department of Commerce, and that won't be done until later this year, but we're off and running. So if you're interested in specific projects, also if you're involved in BIPARC organizations, or others for that matter, there will be some money for technical assistance and organizational capacity. And again, if you could send that to both Nicole and myself, I hope that's okay with you, Nicole, so that we can coordinate this and to help facilitate. The Department of Commerce will obviously make the decisions about which projects get funded. There were some specific dedicated funds for specific projects in the capital budget. For example, we put in about $4 million for Mary's Place out in Burien on Ambon Way. That's currently a shelter or a facility for homeless women and kids. They want to build supportive housing on site as well. So that's an example. We've got a project site. It's already acquired. Let's get on with building the buildings. So just please see us as a resource. Thank you.
And Representative Chopp, thank you so much. I think Representative Macri already had to leave for her other appointment, and we know that you also have other commitments this morning. So I just want to say you have been such a champion for so many years. For the people who are on this call who know that, you are, as Sarah said, a famous person. And there are people who may not know about the length of time that you've been working on these issues, but I want to just flag that a little bit. In a little bit, we're going to be hearing about another really important increase in state benefits through the ABD program that is also part of this continuum of making sure that people are not suffering. If you mentioned that there is a stakeholder session about Apple Health and Homes coming up in the next few weeks, and we will be sure to get the information about that opportunity out to our members if you share it with us.
Thanks, Allison. By the way, that'll be a hybrid meeting. We hope to have it in person and also available through Zoom. We'll try. I think it'll work probably at Pacific Tower, the panoramic room. But in addition, I'm glad you brought up the ABD program. I worked hard to save that program way back when the former governor wanted to wipe out the GAU program. So we came up with Housing Essential Needs Program, where we added a bunch of money for that, I think last session, and now this year with upping the amount for ABD, aged, blind, and disabled. So I really want to thank Allison and this entire coalition for the advocacy for that. That's extremely important. And so, Henry, thanks for that. I'm really glad. I should have mentioned that in my remarks, but I didn't want to go on too long. Thanks.
I think there was a question too about enactment, and I believe July 1 after the signature is the new fiscal year, and I'm not sure on the ABD whether, I think it's July 1 that increase will take effect. So as with most of the things, some of the bills are pushed out a little bit further, but I think the answer to that one is after June 30. I want to say too that I have 5 stakeholder groups that I work with ongoing that are kind of centered around the big areas, DSHS, DCOIF, JA25, DOC. And so if there's anything in the world of working with families, with human service areas, what I would say to you is reach out to me if you're interested, and let me know kind of what area that you're interested in kind of being plugged into. And we meet ongoing during the interim, and then during session, we meet bi-weekly just to track all the bills and make sure that, again, even if we don't know what's coming from the House, we're aware of those things. So just a structure that has been working and making sure that we're hearing voice, and we're morphing legislation as it moves along, not just creating it during the interim.
If I could build on what Claire Wilson just said, is that she and I, plus Donna Sen and others, a whole coalition of people, pushed through a major advance last year's session based on work that started about 3 years prior to that, for the Fair Start for Kids program. Extremely important. It's $500 million per year. Well, there are people trying to repeal the fund source, which is the capital gains tax. And the idea is that we have to remind people what the funding, $500 million per year ongoing, goes for, which is childcare and early learning. And so please keep that in mind as you also plan your summer and fall. because we have to defend that fund source. It probably will be on the ballot as an initiative to repeal it. But because we did it in that order, emphasis on the investment, the kids, my God, and then a dedicated fund, the Education Legacy Trust Fund, and then the fund source, that's critical. Only if we work together will we save that. Because if we don't save that, guess what? I don't think childcare and early enrolling will be cut. Other things will be cut. So just so you know, I mean, we did a lot of great stuff because we had a lot of federal money for the short term here, but this is an ongoing fund source. If it's not sustained, it's a problem. And I really implore you to emphasize the investments, because if you talk just about, the tax cut for rich, that doesn't appeal to a majority of people statewide. Sorry about that. They care about kids and early learning and childcare. They don't care as much about tax reform. So this is a helpful suggestion there, if you have what I mean, and if you know what I mean there. So anyway, thanks, Claire, for all your great work on that. That was a joy to work with you and Donna and others. We had a whole coalition to get that done. Thank you.
Great. Again, thank you all so much for joining us this morning. We are going to get some other legislative updates from community partners. And we will start with Joe from the Mockingbird Society, who will be speaking about Washington Youth. I can never remember the acronym. I know it's WACHA. I know it's youth homelessness. Help me out here, Joe. About some of the.
I'm the same way. I think it's Washington Advocates. I don't know either. I'll put it in the
Washington Advocates for Homeless Children and Youth, but it doesn't really work to pronounce it that way.
Thank you, Allison. I appreciate that.
Great. Thank you for being with us, Joe, to talk about some of the wins this session for youth homelessness.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. I also invited Jesse Friedman from Youth Care to talk a little bit about 1905. But I feel good to kick it off. So I'm going to start with talking about Senate Bill 5566. This is spearheaded by Representative Cooter, and it expands eligibility for the Independent Youth Housing Program. So young people who are experiencing foster care have more access to housing, which we know in transitions, that's when a lot of folks have a hard time and end up experiencing homelessness. So this is kind of a safety net for that. And now it's opened up to any young person between the ages of 18 and 24 with any history of foster care. The other thing that I was hoping to talk about was expanding extended foster care payments. And that process is open up now. And I'm going to pull up a document from Treehouse, which has some frequently asked questions about the ESC payments. The application's open now, and I'll send it out to Sarah to send out the sheet to the coalition. DCYF caseworkers aren't able to work with young adults, but they are able to receive funding. And we're still not sure about the impact with SSI payments, but you can ask the ESC program manager on a case-to-case basis. And the funds will be available for young people starting after their 21st birthday, and each eligible youth will receive $850 a month. And I'll pass it over to Jesse. Thanks, folks.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. So I'll just give a brief overview of HB 1905, which was sponsored by Representative Sen. Sorry, I'm losing my voice here. But so 1905 kind of follows up on the goals that were set forth in SB 6560, which passed in 2018, I believe, which sought to prohibit young people from exiting public systems of care. So that's child welfare, juvenile legal, and inpatient behavioral health into homelessness. So this is a huge bill that does a bunch of different incredible things. requires DCYF and OHY, so that's the Office of Homeless Youth, to develop and implement a rapid response team to support youth and young adults exiting from those publicly funded systems of care that I mentioned. That's at the state level. Also requires the Office of Homeless Youth to provide flexible funding and systems of care grants for local jurisdictions to support kind of the unique housing needs that young people in their areas are experiencing. And then lastly, kind of expands a pilot called the Housing Stability for Youth in Crisis Program, HSYNC, which identifies youth at risk of homelessness or currently experiencing homelessness who are exiting the juvenile legal system. And another exciting level of that is that it was funded, the full bill, for $5 million, which really kind of puts where the rubber meets the road of making sure that those things can be implemented and funded. So we're really appreciative of legislative champions for that. And I feel ill-equipped to kind of say, you know, there were a lot of incredible people working on this bill for a really long time. So thanks to those who are on the call who were here long before I was. So happy to summarize it, but really appreciative of everyone who made it happen. And that's
great. Yeah, thank you both. I think we have a couple of minutes. If you have questions, Poverty Action is not able to make it this morning to give us some updates on TANF and ABD. So we will get those in writing, and we'll include those in we'll post those on our blog and also in our follow-up email. So we have a couple minutes for questions. If not, I will turn things back over to Jody.
Okay. Well, thanks, folks. We had hoped to have a statewide Poverty Action Network here to provide some updates, but we will be sure to follow up with them and get that into our blog post. So, and I am seeing a question in the chat about plugging some programs, and we are going to get to our member updates and announcements. So there will be time for that, I promise. And I do like to stick to my word. We are going to move into kind of the next section. I'm going to pass it back to Allison just to talk a little bit about our new and evolving team.
Thank you, Jody. We are really delighted to welcome a new staff person to the coalition, and she will be relatively easy to spot because I'm going to ask her to wave her hand or something, but the lovely smile and waving hand belong to Rachel Marr, who is our new office manager. This is her first general membership meeting as a member of the coalition staff team. She just started a little over 2 weeks ago, and we're delighted to have Rachel with us. Among many other experiences, she brings to us some recent experience working both at Fair Start and at Mary's Place. So as always, it's incredibly valuable to understand some things about the world of people's experiences as they go through homelessness and the work of being in the frontline positions. Rachel has already proven herself to be a terrific addition to the team, and you'll be hearing from her, seeing emails from her, and I hope we'll welcome her warmly today and whenever you get a chance to connect. And I will now ask Jody to talk a little bit about membership. And I guess what I will simply say is everything that we were able to do together, including getting the community service offices open, including having 4 of the strongest housing and human services advocates serving in the state legislature join us for almost an hour this morning, including winning some things and not quite winning some things, is really because we take seriously being a coalition. And part of that is the opportunities to convene and to work together and to be in solidarity and to take collective action. And part of it is that we cultivate a fiercely independent voice. We are not beholden to any funders. We are beholden to our members and that includes the people who are currently experiencing homelessness. So Jody's going to talk a little bit about some of the really important benefits of membership that we work really hard to bring to all of you. We also work really hard to make sure that there is benefit even for people who are not part of an organization that pays dues, and also that our membership dues are sliding scale. So if you're interested in joining as an individual member, please know that your finances should never be a barrier to being able to proudly say that you're a member of the coalition. We'll sliding scale individual dues as well. And I'm going to ask Jody to share with you some of the exciting opportunities that we have coming up for training and learning together.
Thanks, Allison. I think, Allison, you laid out the benefit of our membership in terms of community and solidarity and the collective work that we do. And what I will add to that, which we talk about often in many of our different types of communications, is that our membership is so key in terms of us having a connection to those of you doing the work, seeing what is happening on the ground, seeing where the gaps in the system are failing all of us, but in particular people that are experiencing homelessness. And so that really does help inform our work. And in turn, we really try to take that information and put it back into the community in a really positive way that's creating transformative systemic changes. One of the other ways that we really try to give back that's explicit in terms of our membership is, as Allison mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, which I think we didn't have quite the cohort we have now, is you get to vote at our May annual membership meeting on our board of directors. So that's one benefit. But I think the other piece that really comes into key is our training. And so I think many of you have seen that we are in partnership with several other organizations, co-sponsoring and co-hosting Trauma Stewardship Institute with Laura Vandernoot-Lipsky. That is happening next Wednesday, April 27th. And that is for staff at co-sponsoring agencies or dues-paying members. And it is not too late. While spots are filling up quickly, we do still have about 200 or so spots that are still available. We're upping our Zoom account to accommodate 1,000 participants, which will be really exciting. We're just over 700 right now in terms of folks that have signed up for that. We are in conversation about what it might look like to build on this with the trauma stewardship folks and do a second training that's really diving a little bit more specifically into homelessness and the specifics around homelessness and being a homeless service provider or experiencing homelessness. We are also in conversation with some providers around looking at mindfulness, kind of through the lens of how not just the sort of self-care, but that community care and how that can actually strengthen bonds between individuals that are working together. So I really hate the term self-care. I really like the term community care, and we're looking at that. And then we're looking at another option of talking with a third provider, and that is still very much in the beginning works of what does it look like to support ourselves and each other. So kind of three different angles at coming at kind of trauma-informed care, trauma stewardship, secondary trauma throughout the year. We are also building on our well-established public benefits 101 work, and we're now extending that into public benefits are key. And this is going to be a series of smaller kind of hour and a half, 2 hour trainings that are really diving deeply into some specific benefits. So our first one, we don't have the registration link up yet, but save the date, May 24th, details to come. We are going to dive deep into ABD and TANF, and this is going to be with experts both on the ground that are helping folks navigate applying and reapplying and getting their benefits, lawyers that know the details of this. People will have access to really have small group conversations, but then also follow up with some of those experts to navigate specifics around that. And then we will extend on that with work first and childcare, and then looking at spend downs as well. So that's the series of 3 that we're doing. And this is in partnership with our folks at Solid Ground and the Benefits Law Assistance, and then REACH, who is out there in the field doing this work. So that's all starting to coalesce and come together. If you're not sure if you are a member, email me and let's get you signed up. Let's get you talking about what's appropriate. I am happy to do that. And I think on that note, I am going to turn it back to Allison to do a special thanks as a key partner and member of our work. And then we will have several minutes for those announcements and updates from you all. So Allison, take it away.
Thank you so much. Well, thank you. Palmira Figueroa from Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal's office was on the call and just had to jump off, but we are so grateful for all of the folks who make time to show up, even if it's not for the entire meeting. It really is wonderful to see you all. And we're really especially grateful when the opportunity comes not only to welcome someone new like Rachel, but also to say our thanks and appreciation to someone who's not leaving, but changing roles. Brianne Schuster, I believe you are here on our call, and I'll just invite you to come on camera. Thank you so much. There's her wonderful laugh. Brianne Schuster may not be a familiar name or face to some of you, and she may be very familiar to others. For the last 6.5 years, she has been working at the ACLU of Washington. She has been a staff attorney there working on a number of issues, but we know and deeply appreciate her as the point person on issues related to homeless people's civil and human rights, and an invaluable partner on addressing sweeps and other violations of people's rights, as well as a partner as we have pushed back on things like state legislative proposals that we didn't get to cover today, and our partner in working to make sure that Charter Amendment 29 was removed from the ballot. So we've got a long history, and I hope we have a long future. We really just want to acknowledge, recognize, appreciate, and thank Brianne and her colleagues at the ACLU of Washington. There are lawyers, and then there are lawyers. And Brianne, you are a lawyer who understands both the power and the limit of the law, and the vital importance of connecting with and listening to people on the ground, and making sure that advocacy doesn't only happen in a courtroom, but that when it does happen in a courtroom, it's the best argument possible. So we really want to thank you and appreciate you, and maybe just invite you to briefly come off mute and let people know the great work that you're heading off to do, and anything else you might want to just briefly say.
Oh gosh, thank you so much, Allison, for having me, and thank you all for everything that you do. It's so much more than I could put into words. So yeah, I'm excited to be transitioning, for at least right now, to working on juvenile justice issues across the country at the Juvenile Law Center. But I'm hoping, as Allison said, to really stay connected in this work and support it, and have some thoughts about how we can, continue to partner together. So it's hopefully a hi, not a bye, but really thank you for having me, and wonderful to see a lot of familiar faces and a lot of new ones.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Well, we may well be calling on you around juvenile justice, legal expertise, and other things. And thank you so much for making time to join us in your last couple of days in your current job. And now we look forward to hearing from some of you, our members, about amazing new programs and work that you are doing that will benefit people here and the folks they serve.
Yeah, thank you. So I would say we know that CCS has stuff that amazing work that they're doing and programs that they are going to promote. We've got some time here, but just please give a couple minutes of what the program is, what the eligibility is, who can refer, and then contact and details into the chat. And then just a shout out, always feel free to email me and ask to get on this part of the agenda, and we'll make sure to the best of our ability that it can happen. So on that note, I believe we have Markai, and I apologize if I am mispronouncing your name, and Lizzie from CCS. So I don't know which of you are going to share information, but take the floor, please.
Hi, hello. Thank you so much. We're both going to be tag teaming a little bit. Markai is going to post the links, and then I'm going to talk about them. So we have two programs that we're offering this summer. One is at Highline Community College, and one is at Seattle Central College. The Highline program, it's a college certificate program, and essentially it's a housing and shelter maintenance technician certificate. You do not need to have a GED. You don't need to have any college experience. You just contact us and we can get you connected. We can fund you. We can get you a laptop. And what it's designed for is to get folks into entry-level maintenance positions at housing and shelter and supported living. And so, however, the dean who runs the program also has hospitality experience, so they can it's designed for folks to work at shelters and supported living. However, there are other avenues they can take. We want folks to have enough skill and knowledge to work where they need to go and where the money is. So that's one. The other one is the case management certificate at Seattle Central. That is also a college certificate program. And you do have to be working, I think, within CCS or another like shelter or housing homelessness program. However, we can work with whoever. We can get anyone who needs to work to get started. And you can go ahead and fill out these forms and send them to whoever. We can, even if they think they're good for one program, we can send them somewhere else. We have a list of other places to send them. So just send out these forms, whoever you think would be a good fit.
Thank you. And we will always share all this information out in the blog as well. I think we've got two more folks that are hoping to share. So maybe Loic, and again, forgive me if I'm mispronouncing your name, from Unite Us, and then Facing Homelessness.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks, Jody. Excuse me, my voice. Hi, everyone. I'm Loic Marcon. I am a community engagement manager with Unite Us. Previously, I actually worked with Public Health Seattle King County. I was on the mobile vaccination and testing team doing some vaccine outreach and education for our unhoused neighbors. And now I work for Unite Us. And Unite Us, we are a company that builds partnerships with community-based organizations, healthcare partners, local governments, sort of any entity as you see it, to build coordinated care networks using a referral platform. So we have, over 130 partners here in King County, and we offer a platform at no cost to community-based organizations. So I just wanted to say hello, introduce myself, and I'll probably be reaching out to a few of you separately to set up meetings and chat a bit more about how a partnership could work. Yeah, I think that's all I wanted to cover. I'll throw my email in the chat as well.
Thank you. Facing Homelessness. I think Angie, am I remembering? I'm bouncing. Thank you, Angie. Take it away.
Thank you so
so much. Hi, everyone. My name's Angie, and I work at Facing Homelessness. And so I just wanted to put it out there that we're interested in getting some training on motivational interviewing, just to help us learn how to better approach conversations about change, and just really bolster our skills a bit around helping folks navigate feelings of ambivalence. And we're just curious to know if anyone out there might be interested in attending that training with us, as well as sharing some of the cost of that training with us through your organization. So if you are curious to learn more or interested, please feel free to email us at info@facinghomelessness.org. And I can go ahead and put that email in the chat. Thanks.
Great. Thank you so much. I'm curious if there's anybody else that wants to make a comment or introduce themselves. Take away the floor. We've got a few minutes here.
I'll hop on really briefly. I just put my email in the chat. I've got a meeting here in like a minute, but my name's Sam Flirsch. I work for a company called New Way. We're off 12th and Pine, soon to be opening intensive outpatient with housing. So we're based primarily out of Minnesota, but our intensive outpatient model for substance use disorders is recovery in supportive environments. And so we are happy to be coming here, and please email me if you're interested about learning more or setting up an individual, meeting with the two of us, the three of us, whoever wants to meet. So my email's right there. I got to hop off. Thank you all for what you're doing.
Wonderful. And then I'd like to invite Jenny Jagger to take the floor in our last couple minutes to talk about some really important work that's happening on the east side in Kirkland.
Hi, Karina O'Malley just had to leave for a meeting, so she asked me to step in to make a comment. In Kirkland, we've got the Health Through Housing program happening at the former La Quinta Inn. And there's going to be a town hall on May 9th. And I encourage anyone who is interested in advocating that it be done in a good way to participate in the town hall. And I will drop the date in the chat. It's May 9th. And we believe it's going to be starting at 5:30. There are also some Kirkland City Council meetings coming up. Two of us spoke on Tuesday this week. No NIMBYs showed up on this issue for that town hall, for that Kirkland City Council meeting. But it's a good opportunity to reach people who otherwise aren't familiar with these issues. And we're expecting lots and lots of NIMBYs to be showing up to the May 9th town hall. And so that would be a really good opportunity for people who are knowledgeable about health through housing and about permanent supportive housing to get the message out about best practices and support for Kirkland City Council members and for King County for doing this program in the right way, the best way. Did you have any questions? Allison, you're familiar with what's going on. Please add anything that you think is important.
Jenny, thank you so much. And thanks to Karina. I just want to give people a little bit of context. We've covered so much ground in this meeting today. Jenny is a Kirkland resident. She is one of a group of wonderful organizers who have done all kinds of work to make the East Side more truly welcoming and inclusive. And they've taken it upon themselves to really speak up strongly in favor of the Health Through Housing site that has been purchased at Kirkland. There is a lot of really vicious opposition, not particularly well informed, as we are familiar with. But what I would say is whether or not you're able to attend a meeting, it is incredibly important if you know people who live in or work in Kirkland, Redmond, or Bellevue, to also contact the elected officials. And we do have a really easy action alert link that I just put in the chat again.
Thank you.
And that is another way that people can participate, even if they're not able to physically show up. And then we are also happy to make connections, if you do live on the east side, with Jenny and her group, who are doing a lot of really good long-term organizing around housing and justice. And we're really grateful that they're showing up and speaking out. So thank you very much. And we can make some connections if people want to do that. I know we're a tiny bit over, so I'll stop.
Thanks, everybody. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. I think the sunshine's coming, so soak that in, and we'll see you in May, if not sooner. Take care, folks. Bye.